Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?
It crossed my mind that you might consider that a possibility, yeah.
Quite apart from the fact that you're a student.
I'm not trying to pressure you into anything, Miss Cross. But I'm surprised you brought it up so bluntly.
A prep school student and a business tycoon both fall in love with the same woman. It's our 350th episode, and we're talking about the funniest name for a dodgeball club, the truth about baby carrots, and the best kind of scrubs.
Oh, are we?
Oh, we are going to find out if Rushmore stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alan Noah. Your name is James Brief, and it's episode 350!
Yay! 350!
Yo! This is a big deal. It's episode 350, James.
I know.
I'm pretty damn excited, and I was talking at home with my son Eli about this the other day, and he's like, 50s, who cares? It's only exciting when you hit 100. I'm like, all right, buddy, I think this is a big deal. This is not exactly our 7-year anniversary because we do 52 episodes a year, but like 7 years. We've been doing this podcast for 7 years. 2016, that was a lifetime ago. We've been podcasting through 3 presidential administrations, 1 global pandemic. The world has changed, since we started doing this. Our second episode was about Ghostbusters because there was a new Ghostbusters that came out in 2016. Then they rebooted the franchise again. We've been podcasting for that long.
Yeah, 7 years. I mean, how many episodes did we miss because of the pandemic, Al?
0. We missed 0 episodes. I mean, that's kind of impressive. And I am not overly nostalgic about the show, and I don't go back and listen to old episodes as a general rule. But recently we had a movie night where Eli was out with a friend, and me and Courtney and our daughter were at home, and we were going to watch something, and somehow the idea came up to watch The Never-Ending Story. And that was a movie that we covered on the podcast 6 years ago. We did that on our 50th episode with friend of the show, Adam Pincus. And I hadn't seen the movie since then. And we watched the movie, and then I went back and listened to the episode. And just from an Alan Noah point of view, our episode completely stood the test of time in terms of me, in terms of what I thought watching the movie now in 2023, all of the obnoxious Alan Noah little comments I made while we were watching the movie. Oh, did you notice blah, 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 blah? I said all of that on the podcast 6 years ago.
I've done the same thing when I listen to an episode that I don't even remember talking about these things. But I'll think about Field of Dreams and I'll go, oh yeah, that James Earl Jones line, that reminds me of that ice cream store I used to go to in medical school. And right there I'll go, Al, this part reminds me of that ice cream store I used to go to when I was in medical school. It's the brain circuitry, that whatever scene in the Goonies or, these old movies that you watched, it happens to not only unlock that memory, but probably some other memories and the milk duds because you had it when you're in the theater at that moment. It's amazing that I always think the exact same random anecdotes. I still have that same string of thought that A leads to an unrelated B.
Yes, and it's also funny that you said the Goonies because shortly after we watched The Neverending Story, we saw the Goonies. One of the movie theaters by us, they sometimes show old movies, and they were showing the Goonies, and I believe it was the first time I'd seen that movie on the big screen. Maybe I saw it on the big screen when it first came out as a little kid, but we watched that movie again, and I hadn't seen it in years, and then I listened to that old episode, and all of the things that were popping up in my head when we watched the movie now, earlier this year, I said in that episode, and that was like episode, I think 4 or 5 of the podcast. So from at least our point of view, our old episodes do kind of stand the test of time for whatever that's worth.
Well, your memory doesn't stand the test of time. The Goonies wasn't the 3rd or 4th podcast. It was the 7th, Al.
Okay. I think that's pretty good. I mean, come the hell on.
Yeah, top 10. It was one of the first 10. You're right.
I haven't listened to those old episodes in a very, very, very long time. And with all due respect to the person who created our first theme song, listening to that old theme song does kind of make me cringe a little bit. Like, it's fine, and I loved it at the time, but I think I just love our new theme song so much more that listening to the old one just kind of makes my skin crawl a little bit.
Yeah, that old one was bad, but I still love, if you remember from episode 100, when we debuted our current theme song, I basically got scammed when I went on, I think it was Fiverr Upwork, and I paid someone $20, and they basically sent me just some gibberish on a keyboard. Like, as in, like, they just hit a hammer on a keyboard for about 20 seconds and sent it to me, and I had been had. But I love our theme song now. Thanks again to John Martinez for making that theme song. Great work. And I do say gladiator with a glah.
You do frequently.
You know, something we haven't done in a while, we used to talk about the statistics about you and me, and just very quickly, how often do you think we agree, Al?
Less than 50%. I'll say 40-ish%.
We agree 72% of the time.
Really? I was way off. Wow. Okay. But I really kind of led the charge on watching Rushmore for 350. Apologies if I railroaded you, James, but I really, really, really wanted to watch this movie. This is, and maybe I lose a little bit of cred for admitting this as the co-host of a movie podcast, but this is the only Criterion Blu-ray that I own. I guess Criterion Collection means that, like, these movies are quote unquote important, that they are significant in some way, at least as deemed by the Criterion Collection, whoever the hell those people are. But this is a movie that I got on Blu-ray, I think within the past few years. This isn't like a Blu-ray I got 10 years ago and have just been holding on to. This was a movie that I really wanted to own on physical media, and I don't regularly buy Blu-rays anymore, really at all, but I am glad that I own Rushmore on Criterion Blu-ray, and I watched that. I even started listening to the director's commentary, and it's actually not just a director's commentary, it's Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson and Jason Schwartzman doing a commentary, and I was really into that.
Yeah, because I think that's what really makes Criterion Collection the Criterion. It's going to have all the commentaries, all the behind-the-scenes vignettes that maybe you saw on an ABC special 25 years ago, and the trailers and the interviews with Jason Schwartzman, and a copy of the screenplay. If you like a film, this is the piece of media to own. So, yeah, Rushmore is one of those films that... in the 90s, I started being aware of these new directors. In a couple weeks, we're going to be reviewing a movie by Guy Ritchie. He was one of those guys that I started hearing about, small films. I haven't seen many of them, but every time they come out, they seem to get, 3.5 stars out of 4, and the critics seem to like it. And this was the first time I had heard of Wes Anderson. But I did see this film in the theater.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week, and I was trying to rack my brain if I had seen this movie in the theater. I'm pretty sure I hadn't. How did that happen? How did you go to see Rushmore in the theater?
One of two ways. This movie came out in 1998, so it's possible that one of my buddies was still working at the theater, and then I just saw whatever I wanted there. He would usually let us in. Or, it's one of those things that, in 1998, that was a staple of what you did with your friends when you hung out that weekend. It was, we'd go to a movie, and then we'd go to, like, the diner or, Bennigans, whatever those kind of things were.
That's really interesting. On Long Island, we would go to the movies, and then Fridays. So totally different experience, completely unrelatable.
Well, if it was your birthday, the birthday song that the staff would sing, completely different. I agree.
I'm just thinking of the South Park with Bennigans. I assume that's what you're referencing.
No, I was just saying that because the restaurants are pretty identical. So I was trying to think of something that would be different there.
Actually, it's a happy anniversary from the South Park episode when Butters is thinking about his parents and they go, happy anniversary from everyone at Bennigans. In his little Butters voice. That was a terrible Butters impression. My apologies. But yeah, it's the exact same fucking thing. But for anyone who doesn't remember Rushmore or who hasn't seen it, it's about an eccentric, overachieving teenager named Max Fisher who attends Rushmore, an elite prep school. Max falls for a teacher, Miss Cross, and befriends a middle-aged industrialist, Herman Bloom. To win over Miss Cross, Max tries to build an enormous aquarium at Rushmore, but the stunt gets him expelled. Bloom and Cross then begin to date, and Max feels betrayed. Ultimately, Max learns to accept life at his new school and the fact that he can't be with Miss Cross. So I don't think I saw this movie in the theater. You did. Was it a big hit when it hit theaters?
It was a pretty decent hit. It opened on December 11th, 1998 for awards, but it was released widely on February 5th, 1999, and it opened at number 13. It opened with $1.3 million.
Okay.
But it wound up with $17 million domestically. In its week 2, 3, and 4, it actually rose from number 13 to number 6, number 8, number 9, actually made more money. So it was something that gained a buzz, and that's probably when I saw it. I probably saw it after a couple of people recommended it. I remembered exactly one thing about this film. I'd only seen this film once. I liked it, but it's just something I'd never seen again.
Wow.
Can you think of the line I remembered? I'll tell you, it was in the trailer.
Yes, of course. Because you are a doctor, it's the line of, what are you wearing? These are OR scrubs. Oh, are they? Am I right? Am I right?
Yes, you're exactly right. It was 1998. I was not a doctor then. But I did want to bring something out for you. If you might be thinking, what the hell are OR scrubs versus, just scrubs? It's not necessarily rank, but it's where you are in the hospital. So I have these two pairs of scrubs from my residency. These blue scrubs, this says Maimonides Labor and Delivery. I was in that a lot, C-section stuff. But sometimes the C-sections were not specifically in the C-section area. They were in the main operating room. So then these scrubs here, these green ones, these are Maimonides OR, Maimonides operating room. So you definitely saw the blue guys, the green guys. So there were OR scrubs. Also, it's the kind of film that maybe resonated with me because this is a film about a high school kid who's talking about trying to get into colleges and, the extracurricular activities. And while that's probably where the similarities end, I definitely related to this. Similarly to the movie that we had reviewed, Election, where Reese Witherspoon's character, Tracy, was a very, very overachieving kid and definitely had the same vibe that it was very fresh in my mind. Not that I was that overachieving kid, but those people were in my high school, and I definitely saw parts of people I knew in these two characters.
So when we talked about Election, I remember that you were like anti-Tracy Flick. You didn't like that character because she was trying too hard with all of the clubs and extracurriculars. And I was thinking about that when I watched this movie with Max Fisher, who's also in a gajillion clubs. Did you have the same kind of resentment towards Max that you did towards Tracy Flick?
Max, while he says things like, I plan to go to Oxford and Harvard is my safety school, he's not actually talking like Tracy Flick, because we see this guy's not getting into Harvard, and he joins all of these clubs not because he wants to impress an admissions committee. He just wants to do everything like this. He wants to start a kite flying society, not because he wants to pad his resume. I just think he's eccentric. So I didn't find him to be the same kind of Tracy Flick, like I want to make sure that I get something so that I could step over someone else so that I get into Brown University and they don't. I didn't get that vibe from from Max, whereas I kind of got that from Tracy.
Well, to psychoanalyze Max, the reason he's in all of these clubs is because he's lonely and because he just needs to not be at home, because home reminds him of his dead mother and Rushmore reminds him of life and being alive, and makes him think of his mother in a positive way because she wanted him to go there. He wrote a play when he was like 5 or 6 years old, and then his mother was so impressed, she wanted him to go to Rushmore, and she made that happen. And then shortly thereafter, she died, but she was the impetus for him going to Rushmore. Rushmore symbolizes his dead mother. They kind of only touch on that in the movie, but that's sort of the subtext of all of it. There's like a montage of all of his clubs, and there's text on screen that shows all of the different clubs. The absolute best one is the Bombardment Society, which is dodgeball. There's no better name for dodgeball than the Bombardment Society. I love that.
I did like that. I might have missed it. How come he goes there? He's not rich, even though he says his father, I think, is a brain surgeon. We later find out his father he's a working class guy. He either owns or he works at a barber shop. Rushmore to me is like one of these Philip Exeter academies. This is for really, really rich kids.
They don't really explain how he's able to afford it. I think you're just kind of supposed to go with it.
I like the fact that he's this lonely kid, and what does he do? He befriends the younger kids, because no one his age will talk to him. In fact, they kind of torment him and they hate him. And his kind of clique are I assume they're probably the youngest kids at Rushmore, and they kind of look up to him in a weird way.
You're saying they, but it's really just one younger kid, Dirk.
I got the idea from a later scene when they kind of have this little, all the boys are kind of throwing snowballs or something at him.
Rocks.
Rocks. I got the idea that they all were kind of cool with him earlier.
I guess that's fair. I think it was more so that Dirk was sort of like his one good friend, and I think it actually kind of goes the other way, where he's infatuated with Miss Cross and he befriends Bloom. Those are adults. Miss Cross is maybe in her 30s, Bloom is in his 40s, 50s, and he's kind of like on their level, at least in his mind, but also kind of he is, like in reality. And he's able to befriend these adults, and it kind of works because he thinks himself very sophisticated like Miss Cross. He also is very immature like Bloom. So these relationships that shouldn't make any sense on paper kind of actually do make sense when you sort of think about it, where it's easy to see why Max would kind of gravitate towards the adults. And I guess also to the younger kid, Dirk, and not kids his own age.
And it also makes sense why Bloom would gravitate towards this guy, Max, because Bloom has 2 sons that he explains at one point in the film could not be any different than the sons he imagined he would have. And These guys are kind of jocks and bullies. The opening of the film has Bloom making this amazing speech. I think a commencement speech or some kind of ceremonial speech at Rushmore.
It's just in the chapel, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's like, some sermon. And he's basically like, fuck the rich. And I love that he's talking to this like preppy school, and he's like, yeah, all the rich kids here, like, they're gonna be fine anyway because they're rich. I'm talking to you, the non-rich people, and I'm thinking, like, who the hell other than Max is not rich? I'm still kind of getting over that, like, why are there non-rich people here? I guess maybe they have a couple token scholarships.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It's a scholarship thing. But yeah, I mean, the speech with Bloom is funny to us, the audience, and brilliant to Max. I mean, like, he runs over to Bloom as soon as that speech is over and is like, hi, you're absolutely right. I agree with everything you said. Can we be friends? I mean, he doesn't literally say that, but that's basically the vibe. And he wants to befriend this guy, and their relationship grows in a way that shouldn't work, but it does feel kind of organic. And I also want to talk about his relationship with Miss Cross, because when I first saw this movie, I, like Max, had a huge crush on Miss Cross. When you saw this movie for the first time, did you have like an infatuation with her?
Oh, Olivia Williams is, she's perfectly cast. Yes, she's beautiful. I don't know if it's maybe the wardrobe or the makeup. She is so perfectly cast as a teacher you'd have a crush on.
The wardrobe, sure. The look, yes, of course, she is beautiful. The accent, I think, is also a very significant factor. But it's just like her whole personality. She just exudes cool. She is a teacher, but not like, the lame kind of teacher. She's a cool one. She's the good one. And she's sitting outside smoking a cigarette, and then Max goes over and lights it for her. And that is horrifically inappropriate. And yet, it kind of works. And she's not like, hey, get the hell away from me. She's like, all right, I'm going to see what this kid has to say because he's interesting. He's got the beret pulled all the way down and he's talking about how Harvard is his safety school. And she's like, all right, let me see what else this weird kid has to say. And I think that draws Max to her more. And also definitely for me, watching the movie, I was just like gaga over her. Do you happen to know what other movie we saw on the podcast that she was in?
No.
She was Bruce Willis's wife in The Sixth Sense.
Right. Yes, Olivia Williams.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a British accent in that film, I don't believe.
I don't think so. I mean, she has like 3 lines in that movie, like she's an important character, but one who is barely on screen in that movie. I wish she was in more things. I love her as an actress. I absolutely love this character. And I love like the way that Max really, really tries to do everything he can to win her over. From saving Latin, which is his big romantic gesture, to that scene in the library where she's like going to have a drink and she doesn't have anything. And he has a pitcher of lemonade just there. He's sitting in the school library with a pitcher of lemonade and he refills her drink. And then she goes to write something and her pen doesn't work. And he grabs it away and chucks it in the garbage and hands her a completely brand new replacement pen that is the exact same kind of pen. Like, it's a wordless moment and it's so goddamn funny. And I love the way that she just reacts by saying, I'm too old for you, right? Like, he's not saying I'm in love with you. He's not confessing any feelings, but she knows and we, the audience, know, and it's perfect. It's all just perfectly timed and perfectly delivered.
Yeah, their relationship, you can't help but watch it with a 21st century lens. Some of the dialogue she says later when she's totally fed up with him, she goes, "You're gonna take off my clothes and then we're gonna have sex," and Max is like, "Oh, he can't believe she's saying it," and it definitely gets the point across. Of course, she's not actually soliciting him, but you can't have this dialogue today anywhere, not even these Rushmore, Philip Exeter Academy places.
Well, that conversation happens after she's quit, so there's less of like the professional stigma attached there. I hear what you're saying. But I think while Max is a student, she is perfectly diplomatic about how she's going to let him down and let him down gently. She's trying to let him down gently. And that's really hard because Max is so infatuated with her that he decides to build her this giant aquarium because they have a little conversation about the fish tanks in her classroom. And then he's like, well, I already saved Latin. What else can I do to win her over? And this grand gesture of building her the aquarium, of course, backfires. He's expelled by the dean or headmaster or whatever his title is, Brian Cox.
That's right.
From Succession.
From everything. He's Brian Cox.
Yes, I know, but I'm thinking of Succession because the 4th and final season is about to premiere, and I'm very excited for that. But I think I forgot that he is expelled from Rushmore pretty early in the movie. It's like a third of the way through, and he's kicked out of Rushmore, and that's like, the titular school, but like it's fine because so much of his story is about his journey after Rushmore. I guess I mistakenly remembered that happened later in the movie.
Yeah, I think I thought the same thing. I forgot he was expelled at all. But once it happened, I go, oh, yeah. And, you figure this is going to be interesting when he goes to public school. And it definitely is. I love that he wears his Rushmore blazer everywhere in this school. It's fantastic.
Right, because Rushmore is not just where he went to school. It is a part of his identity. So, of course, he would wear that to his new school.
I just love how quickly he's embraced by this public school. He starts all these societies. He becomes the school mascot, and they absolutely love him. He breaks out into an amazing 20 times flip, which is, a gymnastic skill we didn't know he had. But, he's really embraced here. He's got his own little entourage. He's giving orders. There's a great montage scene where you're seeing all of his success in this new school. And there's students on both sides of him. He's giving orders to the left. He's giving orders to the right. I'm happy for him because poor guy was a loser. And he's not a mean kid. Well, I mean, he does some stuff that's not so nice, but he doesn't deserve to have no friends. And this girl, Margaret Yang, she befriends him, and I was happy for him.
But he's not that interested in Margaret Yang because he's still hung up on Miss Cross, and his best friend is now Herman Bloom. And their relationship continues to be, I think, hilarious when Bloom goes up to Miss Cross and hands her a letter from Max. And if you stop and think about that, that is preposterous. Max is a 15-year-old kid, and he has his friend, a 50-something industrialist tycoon, go to a school and hand a teacher a note that's like, hey, I'm sorry about the way that I liked you too much. And Bloom is like, yeah, sure, I'll go do that. That makes no goddamn sense at all. And yet it kind of feels real in the movie. And of course, it's only heightened by the fact that Bill Murray plays Bloom, and he's kind of hiding behind a tree, and then he runs over to her, and then he runs away after he hands her the note, and it's just so goddamn funny. And after Max is rejected by Miss Cross, Bloom, of course, falls for her. I forgot that Bloom was married. And so, he's having an affair with Cross, and Dirk, the little kid, discovers it and then tells Max because Max had said a lie about getting a hand job from Dirk's mom. Did you recognize that actress who plays Dirk's mom?
No, who's that?
That's Connie Nielsen, who we recently saw in The Devil's Advocate.
Yeah. You know what other movie she's in?
Wonder Woman?
Gladiator.
I've never heard of that movie.
Won Best Picture.
What did you say it was called?
Gladiator.
Who else is in it?
Russell Crowe.
Oh, do you mean Gladiator?
Yeah, Gladiator.
Yeah, that's not what you said. But I have to mention the scene where Bloom goes over to Miss Cross's house. He's clearly there to talk to her, and he kind of has this pretense of what crazy thing does Max have lined up for us today to do as a threesome? And she's like, nothing. We have the day off. And he's like, oh, okay. And she offers him a carrot. And my friend Brett Sills, who joined us on our Hackers episode not that long ago, I remember him talking about this movie and him saying that Bill Murray eating the carrot in that one scene was perfect. And I watched the movie with the commentary on, like I mentioned earlier, and I forget if it was Owen Wilson or Jason Schwartzman who said that the way Bill Murray eats the carrot is perfect, and they saw it, and they told Bill Murray after they shot the scene, you really ate the shit out of that carrot. And Bill Murray himself said, you know what? I really did. So shout out to Brett. You were correct. Bill Murray himself agreed that he did a great job eating the carrot. And when you think about it, eating a carrot is the worst thing to watch somebody else do. It's so loud, it's so noisy, it's so crunchy. No one wants to see someone else eat a carrot. But Bill Murray eating a carrot, not only is it not gross, it's hilarious. How does he make eating a carrot hilarious? Only Bill Murray can do that.
I think it's a baby carrot.
Fine, that's still a carrot. You know, baby carrots are just carrots that they make into smaller carrots.
No, they're actually babies.
I don't think you understand how carrots work or how babies work, which is a problem because you are a pediatrician.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a number of states where baby carrots are illegal now.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's the next culture war. The next time Tucker Carlson's looking for something to be mad about, it's going to be baby carrots.
He's looking for something to be mad about.
That's true. That's true.
But we definitely have to talk about the turn in the film when Bloom is seeing Miss Cross. And now he thinks, if I can't have her, nobody can. Or specifically, if I can't have her, certainly Bloom can't have her. And then there's this pretty funny kind of tit-for-tat montage of revenge. Max goes after Bloom, and then Bloom kind of gets back at Max, and then one goes a little bit too far, and they get the police involved, and it's pretty fun.
When Max cuts the brakes on Bloom's car, all of that is ridiculous and preposterous, but it works for two reasons. One is that it's been established that both Max and Bloom are horrifically immature. So the fact that they're doing this really immature shit to each other works. It makes sense based on their characters.
Well, one is a 16-year-old and one is, adult.
Right? Do you have a problem with adults who act like children? James Brief?
No, I'm just saying that it's not exactly a parallel. This is not like old school where you have a bunch of, 30-somethings acting like kids. You have one person who's acting like a kid, and then you have an adult acting like a kid, but it's as if they're two 16-year-olds. I do love it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, it works in the logic of the movie. Also, it's enhanced by the soundtrack, which is phenomenal throughout this movie. But this scene is soundtracked by A Quick One While He's Away by The Who, which is kind of a deep cut by The Who. I believe it's their first rock opera or their first mini rock opera. It is perfect for this scene while they're fighting and the crescendo of "You are forgiven, forgiven, forgiven." It's paired perfectly to everything you're seeing on screen. And yeah, the fact that Max kind of tries to kill Bloom, it's not like an actual, attempted murder. It's more like cartoony. And when they eventually call a truce, Max says to Bloom, "Look, I'm done with this. It doesn't matter anymore because no matter what I do, she's going to love you. So I might as well give up." And it's this very heartfelt moment. And then he also just kind of casually mentions while they're at Max's mom's grave that, the real reason he invited him there was because he would plan to have the giant tree that's there, crush him. And he's like, yeah, but it was too much work. That's pretty serious. That's a pretty serious attempted murder, but whatever. It's fine.
Yeah. Another Max scene that I really liked and kind of was setting the tone in the beginning of the film. I wasn't sure if this was a Tracy Flick person or not, but the opening of the film is kind of a dream sequence where the teacher is like, "Well, class, now I'll show you this equation that has stumped mathematicians for millennia. And anyone who could solve this is the greatest person ever."
It's the hardest geometry problem in the world.
Right. And then Max, super cool, like he's in some Steven Soderbergh film. He gets up, he takes the chalk, super smooth, and he just, it's nothing at all. He does the equations, and the professor's like, "You've done it, Max!" And the entire school thinks he is the biggest hero in the world. And this is so ridiculous on many levels because, not only would he not be able to do this, but even if he did, imagine your high school, Al, that some 16-year-old had just figured out that it's actually not E equals MC squared, but it's E equals MC cubed. Changes science forever. Do you really think the people in your high school would start banging on the walls yes, yes? like, it's funny. It's absurd. And, you know, when I realized he's dreaming, I definitely realized, okay, this is not a Good Will Hunting situation. This is more of a guy who imagines maybe he could do it. The kind of guy who says Harvard is my safety school and is getting like a C- in his, his classes.
Right. Yes. None of this is realistic. Apparently, in reality, the geometry question that is on the board is mildly difficult, but actually not really all that hard. I didn't know that. I only saw that on Wikipedia. But yeah, you're right. None of the high school kids that I know would have actually given a shit. Although this is a elite prep academy, so maybe. But yeah, this is his fantasy. This is what he wants. He wants to fit in. He wants to be accepted by his peers, and he's not.
You know, I want to ask you a question. Bloom, he's this weird rich guy. There's a scene at his rich guy home, and for some reason he owns this beautiful swimming pool with a high dive, but the pool's not maintained at all. It's overflowing with disgusting green water. You remember this scene, right?
Yeah.
So he stops the party because everyone is just staring at him. What is the old man doing? And he proceeds to just not give a shit at all. And he cannonballs into his own pool. And he's kind of like relaxing underwater. And, you know, this is a weird thing for this guy to do. But, you know, Bloom's kind of he's an odd character. This is my question. As this guy is sitting there with his feet clutched underwater, another boy swims by in this pool. Is this a hallucination? Is this a Wes Anderson weirdness? Or were there people swimming in this pool that everyone was disgusted that Bloom was jumping into?
No, it's not a hallucination. It's another kid at the party. It's his son's birthday party, and there's other kids there. He's not deliberately trying to stop the party. He's just filled with ennui, and he hates his life, and his wife seems to be flirting with some other guy, so he's just going to jump in the pool and just sit underwater, which, by the way, is a thing you sometimes see in movies and TV shows. It's hard to do. It's hard to just go underwater and just kind of like sit there and be sad. Also, he's like smoking and drinking at the same time while he's jumping off the diving board, you know, neither of which is a good idea to bring into the pool. But he's just so miserable. He doesn't care. He doesn't care that everyone's looking at him. And this other random kid just happens to be swimming by at that moment. I don't think there's any more significance to it than that.
Okay. Did you find out about her, the actress that played Margaret Yang?
No, who's that?
It's an actress, Sarah Tanaka. You've seen her in one other film. I actually mentioned it in this podcast.
I don't know what.
So she was in Old School. She's like the class president who winds up basically saving the day at the end. Dean, you took a bribe. This is how bribes work.
Okay.
And interestingly, she wound up not going the acting route, and she wound up attending Brown University as an undergrad, University of Chicago for medical school, and she's now a cardiologist.
Oh, good for her.
Yes. Now, you know what real world woman she reminded me of? Big in the news in the last couple of years.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
So Margaret Yang winds up winning the science fair, right? Mm-hmm. She has this big project, and Max at the end asks her, how did she win the science fair? Do you remember what she says?
Oh, yeah, she cheated. Oh, you're talking about Elizabeth Holmes.
Exactly.
Okay.
She's Elizabeth Holmes. She had such a brilliant project because she faked her results. And she says specifically, like Elizabeth Holmes, yeah, I didn't get the results that I was trying to get, so I just made up my own data.
Very important distinction. Margaret Yang is a kid. Elizabeth Holmes was an adult. She was ripping people off. In real life, Margaret Yang is a fictional character in high school who won an award and then got it taken away.
True. I mean, Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 13 years. I mean, she shouldn't even serve half. Margaret Yang should get way less than half of that.
No. Margaret Yang is adorable. You love her.
Margaret Yang she's great in this film. I always appreciate, the person that's looking out for the loser. This guy's a new kid, and I always appreciate that in films when the guy's a new person in school and then someone comes up to him and says hello, like, you're the new kid here, because that happened to me. I was the new kid in high school. I didn't know anyone first day of freshman year, and that was a terrifying day.
Who was your Margaret Yang?
Well, I'll tell you, I almost had a Mean Girls moment. I did not meet a single person the first few periods, and lunch was fifth period, and I just stood there with like a tray, and I go, what the fuck do I do now? I just walked around the two cafeterias for like 10 minutes. I just got started circling. I was thinking, do I do what Lindsay Lohan did in Mean Girls? Do I go to like a bathroom stall and just sit down and eat my lunch and cry? And then I bumped into a kid that I had gone to day camp with like 8 years earlier. And he goes, Jamie? That's how long ago I had known him, because he was calling me Jamie. He got me to sit at a table with these like comic book nerdy kids, mostly sweet kids. Further down that table was eventually one of my best friends from high school, Billy Blitzky, who wound up reviewing Terminator and Terminator 2. So that first day nightmare wound up leading to our buddy for Terminator.
I'm sorry, what was that second movie?
Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Oh, yes. I remember that movie. But James, let me ask you, what do you think about Rushmore? Do you think this movie stands the test of time?
Last week we talked about Bottle Rocket. It was the first time I'd seen that film. And while I said it stood the test of time, I said this stands the test of time because it's interesting enough and it's a quirky Wes Anderson film. And I kind of said one of these, like, look, this is not for everyone. You gotta like the quirkiness. Rushmore, I think, is superior in pretty much every single way, minus not having Owen Wilson in it, who's always fun to have in a film.
He did co-write this movie.
He did write the film, and Luke Wilson has a small part in the film. He's the doctor of the O.R. Scrubs fame.
He wrote that line, by the way. That's a Luke Wilson pitch. That was not in the script. I got this from the commentary. When they were filming, he was like, oh, it would be funny. And he pitched that line, and everyone laughed, and that's from Luke Wilson.
I think that line might have made Wes Anderson's entire career, because I mentioned earlier that I remembered that from the trailer, and that line got a big laugh. And I think later people remembered they laughed at a trailer and it was getting good reviews. So I think that line was definitely helpful for this film. And, I just think everything about this film is better. I don't think this is a film for everyone. It still has some Wes Anderson quirkiness, not as much as his later Wes Anderson, like, this is such a Wes Anderson kind of hotel lobby, or, I wouldn't say it's that kind of Wes Anderson quirkiness. I would say that this film is a little bit more, has a little bit more of a mass appeal. 1998's Rushmore, it stands the test of time. It's a fine film. Is it a film I need to watch more often? No, but I do need to see it more than once every 20 years. This was an enjoyable film. So what do you think? Does Rushmore stand the test of time? And I'd love to know what you think compared to Bottle Rocket as well.
You just called this movie a fine film, and that kind of hurts me a little bit.
I meant it's a fine film. Not it's fine. No, this is a fine film. Like fine foods. Let me say it like that.
Okay. Fine. See what I did there? But no, even still, you are wrong. I hate hyperbole, but I'm going to do it anyway. This movie is a masterpiece. If you're going to make a, pun intended, Rushmore of some of the best movies of the 20th century, I think you could really make a strong argument for this movie being included. Wes Anderson does everything right in this movie. With Bottle Rocket, I kind of felt like that movie had more style than substance. This movie has style and substance. It has all of the elements that a director can use when making a movie. It has razor sharp dialogue delivered by fascinating characters, played exquisitely by amazing actors. There's humor. There's real pathos and pain in these characters. When you think about it, this movie is a coming-of-age movie. It's a love triangle movie. We're at 350 episodes. How many other movies have we talked about that had love triangles or coming-of-age stories? A bunch. Many, many, many. But how many movies have we seen like Rushmore? Zero. This is a completely unique movie. And when I watched it the other day, it really struck me how much this is a movie about grief. Max is processing the loss of his mother. Miss Cross is processing the loss of her husband. And that is what motivates these characters. It's what draws them together. They don't really talk about it a ton in the movie, but that is the theme. It's about processing loss. It's about people who can't process loss. It's about friendship. It's about obsession. It's about infatuation. It's about privilege and these rich kids at Rushmore and the poor kid who just happens to be there, like you were saying. I love how Max makes these grand, huge gestures with this aquarium and it fails. And then Bloom does the same thing. He spends $8 million on a huge aquarium to impress Miss Cross, and she doesn't even bother showing up. What does impress her at the very end of the movie? He gets a haircut. He goes to Max's father's barbershop. He gets a haircut, and Miss Cross kind of like tussles his hair a little bit, like, oh, you're trying now. You've put in a little bit of effort into your life. That's something. Like, that's what impresses her. This movie is filled with small moments, with big moments. Yeah, with all of the Wes Anderson signatures, with the lockdown shots and the action going from one side to the other. The soundtrack of this movie is phenomenal. I mentioned that I own the Criterion Blu-ray. I also own the soundtrack on CD. Start to finish, every track on this soundtrack is amazing. Originally, Wes Anderson wanted it to be all Kinks songs, and he only ended up with one song by the Kinks, but it's a lot of British Invasion songs, 2 Cat Stevens tracks, or Yusuf, as he goes by now. The score is done by Mark Mothersbaugh, who you know from which new wave band, James?
Uh-huh.
No, Devo, you moron. Obviously Devo.
It wasn't even a good guess.
No, it was Devo. But, I mean, you always love movie scores. You didn't love the score of this movie?
Yeah, the movie score was good.
No, it's not good. It's phenomenal. Shut up, you idiot. It is amazing. Also, a thing that we've talked about in other podcast episodes is length of movies and how some movies are long and they feel long, and some movies are short and thank God they're short. Or there are movies that are long and they feel short. And that's like a really high compliment to pay to a movie, right? Like, it's long, but it moves and you're so excited that you don't care that it's long. This movie is 93 minutes and it feels longer. And I say that as a compliment. I realize that it might not sound like a compliment. It might sound like a weird backhanded compliment, but there is so much in these 93 minutes. This movie is so dense and filled with so much stuff that you're like, holy shit, this was an hour and a half? If you told me this was 2.5 hours, I would have bought it. It is a phenomenal movie. This is one of my all-time favorite movies that we've done on the podcast. This is probably one of my all-time favorite movies, period. Yes, of course, this movie stands the test of time. I love Rushmore. For anyone out there who hasn't seen it, go see it immediately. Watch this movie. I think it is truly, truly fantastic. Wes Anderson is phenomenal. I read something where apparently some critics or some fans group his movies into a trilogy of Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and the Royal Tenenbaums, and then everything else that he did. And I saw that and I was like, oh, should we have done Royal Tenenbaums next week too and made this like a trilogy? And we didn't. We had other plans. But also, I'm fine to save Royal Tenenbaums for down the road because that gives me something else to look forward to. I remember seeing that and liking it. I haven't seen it in a very long time. But I truly think that Wes Anderson is a gifted filmmaker, and this just might be his masterpiece. So, yes, emphatically, it stands the test of time.
Guess what, Al?
What?
I own the Criterion collection of Royal Tenenbaums.
You do? Has that been opened or is that shrink wrapped?
This one is shrink wrapped, and I own another copy that's opened.
You own 2 Criterion Collections.
Yes, I have 2 copies of Road Tenenbaums, and I have not seen this film also in probably 20 years.
All right. Well, we will watch it on the podcast. Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, I think, is more than 15 years old. I still haven't seen The French Dispatch, which I really, really want to see. That's on HBO Max, and I've been begging Courtney to watch it one movie night, and we haven't gotten there yet. But yes, we will do more Wes Anderson on the podcast.
But before we go, I have one special thing for you, Alan.
What's that?
I have a present for you.
Okay.
This is a temporary little present. You'll get the real versions of it. You'll see when you open it, the real versions of it very soon. You may open up.
Okay, it's an envelope. It's a white envelope. It's not sealed. I'm opening it up. Let's see what it is. It says, Admit 1, Back to the Future, the musical, and there's 2 of them, which means I get to go twice. That's so nice of you, James.
But it's for the same night. It's 2 tickets for the same night, Al.
Oh, I get it.
Do you know anyone that really likes Back to the Future that might want to see the new Broadway musical, Back to the Future, the musical?
I hope you're listening, Courtney. We're going to go see Back to the Future, the musical.
Oh, I think she's really going to like it. I'm really happy for you guys, Al.
Oh, James, I'll take you to the musical instead of my wife.
Aw. Did you know this thing existed?
I did, because it's all over my Facebook feed. The algorithm knows that I like Back to the Future, so that is in my targeted ads all the time.
Is it an algorithm?
I would have to assume so. Well, thank you. That is very kind, James. I'm excited to go see Back to the Future.
Yay!
But that's going to do it for episode 350. Next week, we have a movie that is very, very different. Wild Things. Very different style, very different tone, very different in virtually every way. One thing it has in common, but it's also from 1998, and I'm excited to talk about that movie next week. As always, we want to hear from you guys. I've been saying this for 350 episodes. I mean, come on. We are at Tested Time Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Write to us, say hi, say hello. Just send a GIF, send an emoji, whatever the hell. We don't care. It's just nice hearing from you guys. And we will see you next week for episode 351.
Bye.